Computer. Okay, take it away.
Sorry, I'm a little late. The
That's okay.
internet was down.
No worries.
All right, so thank you everyone for inviting me to share a little bit about Washington State Parks. And hopefully Jordan and I's test work, and you can see that lovely picture. That is of course not one of our parks, but when I was looking at Photoshop or PowerPoint, that's popped up and I thought that was just like the intro for what parks is all about, that beautiful scenery, kids out in nature. And she's got a book, so that's personally awesome for me as a bibliophile. So I am Jen. I'm the interpretive specialist here for Central Whidbey State Parks. Parks is broken down into regions and then smaller areas, which encompass several parks. And Central Whidbey, we have 7 parks. I'll be focusing on 4 of them today, but just to give you a little introduction to the ones that I won't be going too in depth on, we have Joseph Whidbey up in Oak Harbor, just kind of right south of the base as Crosby curves into West Beach Road. So great little park, all about the beach, and it's got some trails on it, so it's a nice little place. And then way on the opposite end, we have Possession Point at the very, very southern tip of the island. Great beach access, really amazing low tides to go check out. A couple of trails, they're a little bit steeper, but they also offer awesome, incredible views south into the Sound. And then South Whidbey, all about the old growth forests down there. If any of you were around in the 70s, you probably know about Save the Trees and how half that park got saved because of the power of the people. So another great hiking opportunity and opportunity just to be at peace in the forest. So the parks that I am going to cover today, Fort Casey. That's kind of the headquarters of our operations for Central Whidbey. That's where the main park office is and everything. Part of Fort Casey is Keystone Spit, that long stretch of land that separates Crockett Lake from Admiralty Bay. Ebey's Landing, one that you guys definitely know all about, and then Fort Ebey just to the north of y'all. So basics on parks. We are open from 8 a.m. until dusk. So our closing time changes throughout the year. We are open year round with the exception of Joseph Whidbey. It is open just April 1st to September 30th. So it's our only seasonal park. And that's mainly during the winter season, our staffing constricts significantly. And that happens with all parks across the state. So we just can't operate all those 7 parks at once. And then, as I said, main office is here at Fort Casey. There's our main number if you ever need to get a hold of us or have any questions. And then I threw in Fort Ebey's. That is not open as much, the office there. Just again, it's that staffing component. It is open for a couple hours every day, Friday through Sunday right now, because we got permission to bring on 2 of our seasonal park aides a couple months early. So we're very excited here for that because most of our park aides won't start until May 1st. And then camping. I'm sure you might get some questions about that. Here at Fort Casey, it's year round. Fort Ebey, we just opened at the beginning of the month, and the campground will be open till the end of October. Reservations are highly recommended because we will build up and you can make reservations 9 months out. That 1888 camp out is the best place for people to make a reservation. That way they can actually deal with the person instead of online, because there is that option as well. And the person can check out multiple parks at the same time. So it's a lot easier. We can't make reservations here in the parks. So that's the best route if anybody's looking. If they're looking for night of, if we have spots, it's first come, first serve. So it's whoever parks in that spot and gets their, reservation and payment in is the one who gets it. And then if I don't mention this, you probably will get questions, but Joseph Whidbey and Possession Point are part of the Cascadia Marine Trail. So those is a paddle trail for kayakers and canoers. And we do have a single campsite at both of those parks, and those are first come, first serve, no reservations. So it's kind of the basic rundown of how we operate and what's going down. Now on to the parks themselves. So Fort Casey is all about the lighthouse, the guns, and the beach. Those are the kind of three main things people come here for. And then have a brief timeline here, throwing up some historic photographs you may or may not have seen. So the area of Fort Casey has been a place where others have kept watch to keep other people safe since time immemorial. The Lower Skagit kept runners here so they could keep a watch on the Strait of Juan de Fuca and the Inner Passage, and anybody coming and going, they would spot and they could let those in the villages along Penn Cove know that people were coming, whether they're that, people were friendly or hostile is a whole nother matter, but they kept watch there just in case there was somebody with some hostile intent, or if there's somebody, one of their regular trading partners coming. So the first lighthouse, we've had two here. The first one was built in 1860 and was just a wood frame with the little tower on top. And that stood out at the very tip of what is now the park. It's kind of the best place for the lighthouse compared to where it is right now. And that survived until they started building the fort, because it's also the perfect place to build a fort to defend the entrance to the sound. So both us, Fort Worden, and Fort Flagler, across the way, we had lighthouses there originally, Point Wilson and Marestone Island lighthouses, and then both of those built the forts later, again, because it's just the perfect location for both facilities. And there's the installation of one of the guns, very dangerous process. But the bulk of construction took around a decade, from 1897 to 1907. There's other construction efforts that happened after that, but the bulk of everything was established by 1907. And we were fully occupied throughout World War I. Because of the fort and all the firing angles for those big 10-inch guns, it meant the lighthouse needed to be moved. So in 1903, a new lighthouse, the one that stands today, was completed, and they moved the light and lantern, or the lens, I should say, that big, huge Fresnel lens from the original lighthouse over to the new lighthouse in a day. So there was no interruption of service. So that's pretty amazing in those days, because a Fresnel lens is 400 to 600 pounds. So to get it out of this tower, move it, what is that? That's got to be over a quarter mile, or pretty close, and up into the tower for the other lighthouse is pretty extraordinary for that time. And then throughout there, of course, the fort was operational during both World War I and World War II. It was kind of in a caretaker training status in between the wars, and then got fully reactivated for World War II. The original guns were all scrapped to be made into other armory for World War II, just because they advanced in technology. Those guns were just out of date and too slow to fire on the faster ships and aircraft. So new guns got installed, not as many, and many of them were rapid fire and targeted for anti-aircraft fire. And then, interesting note for the lighthouse, it closed in 1922 and was just kind of in caretaker status eventually with the military. And they had, you know, people stationed there during World War II. The Canine Corps lived there, and the dogs were out back, and they would train the dogs for night patrols. So it was kind of interesting little tidbit on the lighthouse that people always find interesting. We got the property in 1955. We have the main core of the batteries and the lighthouse. And then Seattle Pacific has the cantonment area with the barracks and the officers' housing, where they operate, you know, Fort Casey Inn and Camp Casey now. And if you'll notice, there's no lantern house on top of the tower. The lighthouse board was very big into reduce, reuse, recycle before it became popular, and took our lantern house in 1927 and shipped it off to New Dungeness for on top of their tower after some refurbishments over there. Their lantern house didn't fit anymore, but ours did. So they just like, well, you're not being in use, so we're just gonna move it over here. And then in 1968, and one of the next big momentous occasions for Fort Casey, once it was a park, was when the 2 big 10-inch guns were installed. And those were brought over from Subic Bay in the Philippines. So to much fanfare. There's a couple smaller 3-inch guns that were brought earlier in the 60s, kind of all through the same scheme, but you can see in that photo, looks like most of Coopville, and if not a good chunk of the island, turned out to celebrate the grand opening and installation of those guns. And so kind of updates on what's going on now. Those big guns are actually being repaired, or not repaired, but repainted. So all that old paint from 1968 is being stripped away, and it's going to be repainted and looking glorious. That's literally started yesterday and should be done around Memorial Day. I think final inspections just after Memorial Day, but the work should be done by Memorial Day. So keep your fingers crossed for good weather and no nasty surprises as they're stripping the paint away. We just opened the lighthouse on weekends, 11 to 5. So if anybody, once you guys open up, send people our way too. They can check out the lighthouse. It's been fun. There's of course COVID protocols and limits on how many can enter, and masks are required and all of that. The picnic area, it's that big open space with a huge parking lot before you get into where the office is and to the main parking lot in front of the batteries. There officially opens May 1st. But you know, a couple of weekends ago, we had that ridiculously gorgeous Saturday. It was so crowded here, they had to open that parking lot and restroom up. So you may see it open in different times. And I think we had a couple scout troops here camping last weekend. So it does see use in other ways other than just a picnic area, but that officially will open May 1st. And that's kind of what's going on with Casey. So Keystone Spit, I think Olympia headquarters officially considers it Fort Casey, but those of us on the ground consider it its own thing. It's that long strip of land running from Fort Casey all the way down to Driftwood Park, the county park. And that was formed after hundreds or thousands of years after the Ice Age. When the Vashon Glacier was on top of it, weighed down the land, and the land rebounded once the glacier receded, and that raise in land was just enough for the tides and currents to start depositing gravel on each side coming from each direction. And over time, though, it just deposited more and more and more and more until eventually both sides met and closed off Crockett Lake from the rest of the bay. So it's a really cool geological process that happened there. And it's created some really cool areas. If you're a birder, this is a spectacular area because you get shorebirds for the beach, and then the lake brings up different types of birds. And one area, let's see, gotta think of my directions here. East side of the lake, there's more spring, so there's more freshwater introduction than the west side, so that's more saline. So you're getting two different bird populations across the whole of Crockett Lake. So you get some pretty spectacular things over there. Then underwater is also spectacular. This area here, this is right near the jetty. The jetty's off over here. Underwater is a marine conservation area, and it has some pretty spectacular views. I'll show you in a second what I mean by that, and more things for you guys to check out later. And then over time, many times people have tried to establish residential developments lasting the entire length of the spit. It started, first one was in the 1890s, and that's what this is meant to be the bridge for the railway from Coopville. That didn't quite work out. There was no new Chicago or New Brooklyn established. And then if you guys were around in the 70s, you know, they tried to create Chicago yet again. And the only thing that was accomplished really was the local fire departments got some really good training on bringing down some residential buildings. And so now it's all preserved as state park land and won't get developed more than those few houses and Callens that are already there. And here's, I'm going to click on this. We don't have time to show you the whole videos, but I want to show you the website so you know, oops, where are you going? So you know what it looks like and where to go, but there's a nonprofit called Made in Puget Sound by this gentleman, Drew Collins, and he's made a couple of videos for us, and one of them is Keystone. So this is what his website looks like, and if you go under About and then Educational, it'll show the Keystone. He's made one for Deception Pass, and he's working on one for Possession Point too, but they are spectacular, so I highly recommend you guys go out and check out Made in Puget Sound, because you get to see all the amazing marine life underwater there, and it's amazing. So other big things going on on the spit. I just heard this morning the floating docks are going to go in mid-April. The rebuilding of the dock, of permanent dock, that got destroyed, was it 2 winters ago now, I think, with those wonderful winter storms we get. If all the permits go through, that will start in July. We have a kind of window between July and February where it's possible to do the buildings and driving the pilings in and all of that needs to go on to restore the dock. So that is something that will hopefully be happening this summer. And the boaters come salmon season will be very, very happy to have that back. And then I know many of you know Ali Hudek, and who's with Soundwater Stewards now. She and I are working on a video series called Hidden Worlds and Locked Doors. She's currently editing a video that we shot about the powerhouse at Fort Casey, but our next video up is to explore those 2 ponds down at the far end of Keystone Spit to see what's living in under the water there. So that should be exciting. So check out Soundwater Stewards Vimeo page in the future. You'll hopefully get some pretty cool information from those. And Fort Ebey. So Ebey's all about the beach, the trails, and of course the battery. And I don't have good historic photos of Fort Ebey, so you guys are going to get some of the first looks at a new interpretive panel that we're putting in. There is one kind of in this area here. Get my laser pointer on. But we are going to replace that with this panel. So you get kind of a look of what it looked like back in World War II. That's when Ebey was operational. And it was, again, with the guns designed to target those faster moving boats and any aircraft that might come in. So you get a look at the battery itself cut away. It was designed to be camouflage from an aerial attack. So it was all covered with earth and planted, unfortunately with ivy and gorse. So we have outside of the battery, lots of fun trying to eradicate those invasive species elsewhere in the park. But you can see the cutaway, the different engines rooms, plotting rooms, and then where the shells and explosive powders were stored before being brought out and fired. And just like Fort Casey, never fired in anger, lots and lots of practice. And actually, Battery 248 here at Fort Ebey was so good that they won an international competition for light batteries. So they were very good and always at the ready just in case something came through. So the other thing that Ebey's all about is, of course, the trails. And I wanted to show you, this is brand new as of last week, an updated trail map. The county added some new properties, so they have new trails there to the north. So that's exciting. So, oh, hang on. There was a chat and now it disappeared on me. Looks like, oh, is the ammunition still existing in the batteries? Definitely myth. So, nope. When the military left, they took all of that. That's not to say there's, something, one of those shells fired in practice might wash up on the beach. It happens. They're pretty heavy. I forget what the smaller ones at Ebey would have weighed, but the ones from the 10-inch guns were over 600 pounds. So pretty heavy. So no live ammunition. There shouldn't be. Otherwise it'd be a big surprise to everyone. So let's see, that's kind of Ebey. So Ebey's Landing, I didn't do a history of this one because you guys know infinitely more than I do about Ebey's Landing, and probably could give me several lessons on it. So Ebey's Landing is going to be more of an update. Most of our volunteers, of course, pulled out due to COVID, but in their, I don't want to be the public, but I still want to do something for the parks. They refurbished that bench at the top of the stairwell there. So that's back out and looking beautiful if you haven't seen it recently. And speaking of the stairs, the Washington State Parks Foundation gives grants to different friends groups across the state. And the Friends of Whidbey State Parks has applied this year for a grant to replace those stairs and get those looking better. So cross your fingers. I'm not quite sure when the announcements on what grants they've awarded is happening, but cross your fingers and hopefully we'll have some beautiful new stairs there in the next year or so. And then we are also working on replacing the interpretive panels at Ebey's Landing. So they've been there since before 1995. And that's way, way too long. Things change and, perspectives change and get updated. And as you know, moss and algae grow on everything here, including signage. So we're hoping to get those all designed and replaced this year as well. So cross your fingers, that's a lot of work to be done, but very exciting to get that done. And then, do you guys have any questions for me or about the specific parks or anything?
I was just curious, we've seen so many local visitors from the Puget Sound area coming out during this past year. Have the parks, the local ones here in the reserve, seen really a growth of visitors or campers or hikers or picnickers? It just seems like people are trying to escape to Whidbey Island in great numbers.
They are, it's not just Whidbey Island, it's parks across the country, county, city, state, federal, have all seen a drastic increase since COVID started. Even in the winter time, our numbers were way up. I know the snow parks up in the mountains have had record winters. They have never seen as many people in a winter than they have this past winter. So yeah, attendance is up all over. And a lot of it is local, but this summer we were still seeing people from all over the country.
And a little bit of a follow-up. I think, if I might be mistaken, but I think there is a patch of ground up above on Ebey Road that is state park land, kind of across the road from the ferry house. The top, before you make that really sharp corner down to the beach at Ebey's Landing, any plans to develop that into something parking wise or otherwise, or no?
That's not ours. We have
That's not
basically
yours.
the parking lot, and then the inner wedge, when that big sharp turn, we have a tiny bit of that inner wedge,
Oh, okay.
and then basically parking lot over to the edge there. So top of the bluff beach, and then a tiny bit of Pirogos. Yeah.
Okay, so that's not state park. Okay.
No, nope. I don't know whose it is. I gotta look at a map every time between us and NPS and Nature Conservancy. It's hard to figure out who owns what without analyzing a bunch of maps.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Jen. So a question I got a couple times last year was, will they lock us in? So like when it closes at dusk, will the gates be locked? Will they be stuck there overnight? how does that work?
So our park staff basically do a clear out. And the main gates really only get half gated. So like the internal or the gate on the side of the road for incoming, that gets closed. But usually that other side, the outgoing, is open.
Okay.
And at Fort Ebey, they do fully gate off the battery and the beach.
Okay.
Because the campers aren't supposed to be accessing that. They're just supposed to stay at the campground
Mhm.
after dusk. So they will gate that, but they will sit there and wait for that last straggler car, and then gate behind them. So yeah, they won't get locked in. You might have a rather cranky, but trying to be professional ranger or park aide following them out. But, pretty much as long as you're, look at whenever sunset is, and if you're heading back to your car shortly thereafter, you're usually pretty good.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and the close time does vary, not just through the year, but depending on weather. Because if
Okay.
it's, super nasty and storming, it's going to get darker. I mean, probably even before sunset, but they won't. So they might be closing those gates and starting that sweep process, at sunset.
Gotcha.
Versus gorgeous day, dusk, you'll have, 20, 30 minutes, maybe.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Bob.
Yeah, question. Deception Pass State Park is not considered a Whidbey Park?
No, they are their own area since they are so big and the most visited park in the state. So Deception Pass, and I think they have, I don't know if Dugala is officially a state park or just land that we have, and then Kukatali Preserve, that's in partnership with the Swinomish tribe, just the other side of the channel there. Is their area.
So this is more of a administrative type of division rather than geographical.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah, it's just so big and so visited. It's pretty much a thing on its own.
Yeah, I think it's the #1 park in the state, isn't it, for visitors?
Yep. And we get a little trickle down. I can tell you from working the office last summer, we'd get people calling. It's like, they're closed for day use. Are you guys still open? And I'm like, yes, come on down. So, yep.
I have another question. You showed that new trail map released last week. Where can we find that?
On Island County's Parks and Trails website.
Okay, very
Yep.
cool.
Yep. So we're looking into how we can mass produce it, but in the meantime, we just go there too and print them.
Okay, gotcha. I'm sure that will be useful. I probably will print off a big one for the house this summer because I think this would be helpful for people to take a look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
if people are looking to hike or do
Mhm.
any trail bike riding, send them to Ebey and the county's kettle trails.
Yeah, and this QR code is really nice too because then they can just pop it on their phone and take off with that. So that's great. Wonderful. Any more questions for Jen?
And then let me pop through. There is my email. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me if you have more questions or anything.
Great.
And then if you do have any geology nuts, that's one of our bigger glacial erratics here at Fort Casey. So that's fun.
And where can we find that?
Just in the woods off of the group picnic area.
Okay. Neat.
Mm-hmm.
It's very impressive.
Thank you, Joan. Yeah, there's a lot going on. at all the different parks. They're all a little bit different from each other, but they have a lot in common. And one thing that a lot of visitors are looking for is beach access, and all of them have beach access. South Whidbey didn't for a while just because the bluffs love to erode there, but that trail is reestablished. It's a little sketchy in wet weather at the end, but you can still get down to the beach there now again.
Great.
Is that erratic bigger than the big rock in Coopville?
No, nope, I don't think there's anything on island bigger than the big one at Coopville.
Good to know. This is important information.
Mhm. And there's one, is it Saratoga Woods? There's another one. I forget, somewhere on the south end, there's another pretty decent sized erratic too.
Yeah, it's in Saratoga Woods.
Yep.
It's really hard to find. You almost need a guide to take you there. If you know where the airport runway was, the former airport runway was, it's sort of down towards the, I guess, north end of that runway, if I got my directions safe, correct. But it's a pretty big rock.
Yeah, that might be a little bit bigger than ours too, but I don't think it's bigger than the Coopville one.
Great. Well, Bob, I'll sign you up for our next trail guide down there.
I was going to say, what's your hire, Bob?
Yeah. Every time I go there, I have to refine it, because the trail that goes down to it is kind of hard to find. It overgrows itself over the winter time, and it's not well known either, too. Although there is an interpretive sign way down at the bottom that explains a little bit about it, but it's humongous rock.
Oh. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for meeting with us today. Like I mentioned earlier, we get so many questions about the different parts of the state park, and just for us to know, what time you guys open, close, how we can send them your way for camping reservations. All of that is really great information. And I know we will be so happy to share it this summer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good meeting all of you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. See you in a couple weeks.
Bye.